people that they're talking to. If McDonald's wants to change, if you want to go to McDonald's, if McDonald's wants to change the sauce on their Big Mac, what are they going to do? They're going to hire a focus group. And they're going to sit down and they're going to eat the new version of the Big Mac. And either going to go thumbs up or thumbs down. And with that information, they go back to the CEO and the board of McDonald's, and they say, look, they like the old sauce. Don't change a thing. Steve Biscotti went to his fans and said, hey, there's ticket holders, what do you think? Should I bring him on? Should he become a Baltimore Raven? Now, what would happen if his fan base enthusiastically supported the choice of bringing Colin Kaepernick onto the team? Do you think Steve Biscotti, being a business owner, would have done otherwise? Probably not. He says, okay, these people are going to buy tickets. They're going to support the decision. Internally, we've had some discussion with the coaches. Let's bring them on. That's what he was in the process of doing. That process got interrupted because Colin Kaepernick's dingbat girlfriend used an image from Django Unchained. And she turned, was it Leo DiCaprio? Who plays the bad guy? Is it Don Johnson? Whoever plays the plantation owner in Django Unchained. She put Steve Biscotti's face on that character. And then Ray Lewis, who's a whole other character in himself, just recently got inducted into the Hall of Fame. She put his head onto the, I believe it was the Django character, if I'm not mistaken. So basically what she was saying is that Steve Biscotti, who's the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, is really a plantation owner. And the guy that's most associated with the franchise, who has stood up for Steve Biscotti and not really the greatest supporter of Colin Kaepernick, Ray Lewis, and Ray's got baggage, don't get me wrong, is basically a plantation coon. That's what she said. Now, if you're Steve Biscotti, do you want to hire Colin Kaepernick? Do you want to hire him? At that point, you're thinking to yourself, holy smokes. I not only have to deal with Kaepernick and the polarization, but now I got to deal with this crazy girlfriend who just called me a plantation owner. Now, if you're another owner in the NFL and you see that, are you going to be more or less inclined to bring Colin Kaepernick onto your team? And by the way, he's not that good. He stopped caring about football before he started to sit down. Sitting down was his I'm kind of done with football moment. And then he had that Nate Boyer exchange. Hey, brother, why don't you take a knee? It's more respectful. Look, I think that protesting is fine. You want to protest, protest. If the majority of the people who were buying tickets in the NFL wanted that protest, let them have it. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's the case. It's so funny. Basketball, basketball is a sport that is much more inclined for protest. Basketball is a very, very liberal sport. Okay. I've hung out on a lot of basketball forums, went to a lot of basketball games. A lot of professionals attend basketball games. They're expensive. Football games can be not as expensive as basketball. You try to get a ticket to the Warriors, the Spurs, and it's really super expensive. So you got to have money. And it just tends to be a much more liberal sport. Anyway. In basketball, they have a clause for the players must stand for the national anthem. And it is a far more liberal sport than football. And in football, which is a much more conservative sport, they don't have a clause. Isn't that funny? It's just, that speaks to the high strange of the world. Anyway, the bottom line here is that Kaepernick has created more controversy, more chaos. I think if they're trying to use Kaepernick to ignite some progressive, liberal slash socialist interest in the upcoming election, I think it's a failure. I think it's an utter failure. And the Democrats still have not figured out that what America really, really wants is they want somebody who understands what the needs of the people are. And the needs of the people are not about some kind of, Bolshevik, faux Bolshevik program. They're just not. We're not. I mean, look, there's been, and I've talked about this before, the colleges were taken over in roughly the 1960s. The early 1960s, and even after that, once the baby boomers, and a specific generation of baby boomers, the ones that were protesting and taking over the college campuses, many of them went into academia. And the ones that weren't protesting, those who did have a socially progressive slash liberal POV, they went into education as well. So what happened is that our education system, from really top to bottom, but especially the universities, were taken over by the liberal intelligentsia. So now what they've done is they've pumped out this factory of kids for roughly the last 30 years, but really the concrescence of that, I'd say the last 8 to 10 years, in a big way, dovetailing with the millennials in a lot of ways. So they're trying to capitalize on these foot soldiers that they've created through the universities, and thinking that a figure like Kaepernick, who's extremely polarizing, can catalyze to some extent, this new program or this new identity, this new brand, because Kaepernick is a brand. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him as we move closer to the midterms. Will he move into a more open and openly political? He's already political. I'm talking about openly political. I know where he won't be going. He won't be going to Chicago to support Rahm Emanuel, because Rahm Emanuel is not running for mayor. Rahm Emanuel has done an absolutely disastrous job of running Chicago. Very difficult city to run. I'm not going to give him any slack, though. That's a guy I'm not crazy about. If you know anything about Rahm Emanuel, he and his two brothers, both of whom are very successful. One brother helped write Obamacare, Zeke Emanuel, as arrogant a prick as you can find. His other brother, Ari, is an agent in Hollywood. So they're extremely successful, these Emanuel brothers. Okay. Their parents are Israeli. All three of them are dual citizens. And his parents belonged to a group called Irgun. And Irgun was, or would qualify today as a terrorist group. It was one of the groups that was responsible for wresting what we now know as the nation-state of Israel from, at that point in time, mandate Palestine, which I believe was somewhere between its roots in the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, and the Brits. And so that group, Emmanuel's parents, David Ben-Gurion, these were the people that bombed the King David Hotel and ultimately threatened terror unless Israel was essentially handed over. I mean, that deal was already done. That was done in the Zionist Congress a couple decades before that. But they just wanted to make sure it got done a lot faster. So that's the roots of Rahm Emanuel and where it comes from. And I was not a huge fan of him inside the Obama administration. And he didn't last very long, did he? No. Went to Chicago, and Chicago is a rough place, man. It is a rough place. The budgets there are horrible. They've got so many entitlements. running through that state. I think the state itself is bankrupt 3 times over. I don't know how Chicago stays afloat. They must be cooking the books. Well, Rahm Emanuel's getting out, and that probably tells you something. Tells you that the ship is going down in Chicago, likely. Who's going to be the next mayor of Chicago? I know this sounds really crazy, and she won't do it because it's beneath her, but that would be actually a really good job for Hillary Clinton. That's about the size of position she could manage. Chicago's already the most corrupt city in the country, maybe the world. No, maybe not the world. Pretty corrupt. So she'd fit hand in glove in a place like Chicago, and she's from Chicago, but she won't be. It's way beneath her stage. She would not. She wouldn't make it. Wouldn't be her thing. No. So anyway, that is the aftermath of the Kaepernick situation. Everybody's talking about it, and it's the lead into football. And Kaepernick, again, just to round this off and wrap it up, he's now involved in a suit against the NFL for collusion. And he has to demonstrate that the league has made a league-wide decision not to sign him. He might win. It depends on the judge. We all know how that goes. If you have an activist judge, there's a really, really good chance that he might skate through this. By the way, I think the 5 people, the 5 terrorists in New Mexico have been rearrested, if I'm not mistaken. The FBI, maybe the FBI has just decided to extricate them because, their thing went south, and they have to cover their tracks. Maybe that was part. It's very hard. It's very, very difficult for us to trust anything from a legal perspective. Like everything that we had related to in the past around due process is just gone. It's gone. It's out the window. And that all started before Trump was even elected. And look back on the strategy that they were going to go in and try to flip the delegates. When did that ever happen before? There was a process there. We respected the process. I mean, look, we've had some dirty elections. The election with Bush and the election with Al Gore, filthy, rotten to the core. Did the Democrats back then decide to go in and try to flip the delegates while this process was taking place? No, because Al Gore was told to shut up. Just shut up and take the results, and you will become the green pope. And that will be your new role. And you will be given an Oscar and a Nobel Prize. And you'll get to fly all over the world in a jet that burns immense amounts of fuel, but nobody will ever call you out on it. And if you decide that you want to grope a massage therapist or two, there's going to be this thing called #MeToo. You don't worry about it. You're going to be left off of that list as well. So just shut up and take the results. Your life will be just fine, Albert. That's exactly what happened. It was dirty. It's a dirty election. What about the Obama-McCain election? Probably dirty too. What about, no, Obama-McCain was not dirty. I'm going to backtrack on that. I'm going to walk that back. Bush and Kerry was filthy. I talked about this yesterday. They're both a couple of skull and boners. And that's how they worked that one. And Kerry, same thing. Look, John, you're going to lay down. You're going to lay down, brother. And guess what? You'll get to come back in as Secretary of State. And your wife, Teresa Heinz, from Heinz Ketchup family, well, she'll get to keep all that wealth. You notice how these guys marry rich wives. Cindy McCain, coming in from that crime syndicate family, the liquor distributor, the crime boss of Phoenix, Arizona, the Southwest. John Kerry marrying very rich Teresa Hines. I mean, these,